So, welcome everybody to our third out of 4 Indigenous Storytelling Month series of February here. I'm excited for this one. I would like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory, homeland of the Cree, Dene, Nakota, Lakota, Dakota, Saulteaux, and Ojibwe, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. So, Indigenous Storytelling Month is a time-honored tradition in Indigenous culture. It's valued because it passes on traditional knowledge, but also entertains and shares memories. Oral history shares information from generation to generation. My name is Shade Heimbecker. I am currently working at Office of the Treaty Commissioner as a student mentorship under, I'm being mentored under Amy Cisaquasis under public education. And I'd also just like to thank everybody that, came together to make this happen. So Autumn Baptiste, Charmaine Gardner, and Amy Cisaquasis. This couldn't have been done without them. So I thank you guys so much for all your hard work to get this done. And just a little bit of housekeeping. Just if you guys could keep your mics muted, and if you're comfortable, please keep your cameras on it as it allows speakers to see the engagement. If you have any questions, just post it in the chat, and then once the speaker is done talking, we'll address those questions afterwards. And then, yeah, again, just please let us know where you're joining in from, how many people are with you, as that's super important, as the number of participants for our statistics. And if you're from a classroom or school, just let us know which school you're from. And so I'm going to pass along the speaking to Autumn Baptiste now, and she's going to introduce our first speaker.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Hi, I'm Autumn from South First Nation. Our first speaker today is Nora Cummings. Miss Nora was born and raised in Saskatoon, a founder of Saskatchewan Native Women's Association in 1971. She's been involved in creation of several organizations, including the Saskatoon Métis Society, Local Number 11, and the Native Women Association of Canada, a founding member of the board of directors. She's a former member of the Saskatoon Indian Métis Friendship Center board of directors and former chairperson of the Métis Nation, Saskatchewan Election Commission. Among her awards, her recognitions are the Guy Bouvier Lifetime Achievement Award, the Queen's Golden Jubilee Award in 2002, and 2003 the Blue Lantern Award, Heritage and Culture. In December of 1993, Senator Nora Cummings took oath of the office as Senator for the Métis Nation in Saskatchewan Senate, where she still remains. So Nora, if you were available, please let us know.
Start the video, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, right here.
Oh, she's mute. I'm just going to unmute her here. There we
Okay.
go. There we go.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and Tansi, everyone. I'm a Michif, Métis woman. I live in Saskatoon. I was born in Saskatoon, and I'm going to tell you about my family and where they came from and where we lived. I'm a Road Lowndes Métis. My family was from the Round Prairie Settlement, which is 40 kilometers south of Saskatoon, and they lived there after the rebellion. They moved there, and that's where their settlement was. And then they moved into Saskatoon. My mother was just 16 years of age when they moved into Saskatoon, and the reason for that was their settlement. They couldn't grow anything, and then the men had to always leave the families, and the women were always left at home. So they decided that they couldn't make really a living. It was very hard for them. So some of them moved to, most of them moved to Saskatoon. My family moved to Saskatoon, and they didn't realize what they were getting into, because they were so used to, in a community, as you know, when we're all together in our communities, we're very close knit. And when they moved into Saskatoon, they were given a little house which was on Broadway. And it was at that time where they lived there for a while. And then they ended up, didn't realize that there was no jobs available at the time, but my uncles had to go to work, and they would get these coupons to live on, and also my kokum and my mother and them, when they lived there, they had to. And they lived like that for a while until after I was born. They decided this wasn't a way of life for them, because they were like agents. We call them agents. A lot of people call them agents. They were people that would come to the home, and they would investigate who was in the house. And as you know, most of our people, when people come to our house, whatever we have to eat, bannock or tea, we feed them. And they couldn't feed their own family. My grandmother, my kokum, was there, and my uncle came by, and the agent just happened to walk in, and he told her if that happens again, they were going to cut them off, and they wouldn't be able to get any food. So they gathered together, most of the Métis, and they decided that that wasn't the way they want to live their life. So then they found this area, which is where Bowman Collegiate is in Saskatoon on Broadway, on Clarence Avenue and Taylor Street. And it was all land then. It was nothing there but land. So they took up residency there, and that's where we lived. There was over 35 families that lived on that land. The other relatives of ours that came in from Round Prairie lived on the west side of town, which was right off 11th Street between now. We know the streets now because we can pretty well tell where they all lived. Between Avenue J up to Whitney Avenue and all that area, that was where they all lived in their little shacks as well. So they continued. So my dad and my uncles went to work. They got teams of horses, and my dad would cut hay for the farmers, and he would haul manure and sod for the Chinese garden. Everybody took up some jobs where they could make money. They didn't believe to live on those kind of things because they were tied down. But where we lived, we had where Bowman Collegiate is, that was all plowed, and our families all planted the garden there. And that in the fall, they would harvest that, and we would all be able to live on that. We lived in our little tents and shacks there, and my dad worked with the Chinese garden for that, and they taught him they were telling him how he could dig a cellar, a sand cellar, and he dug that cellar, and they give sand, and they put our vegetables in there, and they would stay good for the winter, and that's how we survived. We hunted, my people hunted deer and snared rabbits and chicken. They went out hunting, and then they would also get prairie chickens and stuff like this, and they would the old people would also can a lot of that stuff, because we had no fridges or deep freezers like they have now, and we survived. And I was one of the ones that always worked with my dad, because my sister was the older one, but she didn't like doing that. And when I had a kid brother, and he was too young, so I had my own team of horses, and I would help my dad when he would go out and cut hay and all of that. And I enjoyed doing that. And we didn't have barns for our horses, so they dug a basement, was called underground barns, and that's where they put their horses for the winter, because they had no barns, and they wanted to make sure their horses were well looked after, because they were the ones that were providing for us. And as years went by, my grandmother my kokum got sick, and she was getting old, and my mother had designated me. I would be the one that have to look after my kokum. So I had to quit working with my dad and look after my kokum. I looked after her until she passed away. And then not only did I look after her, I looked after a lot of the older people and my cousins as well. My aunties and them had babies, and sometimes they'd do some work, and sometimes I would babysit them. So I looked after the old people in babies. I went to the school on Broadway, which is called St. Joseph. At that time, it was run by nuns, so it was sort of like a day school. We didn't get much education there. We learned how to wipe desks and sweep floors. These nuns weren't the best. But I quit school at an early age because it was very frustrating. I never really got an education. So I got I quit young in school. And then I ended up getting married at a young age and raising my own children and my own family. And but before I done that, you know, my two cousins, I had two cousins, and we were very close. And they were both male, and we learned how to chop wood for the old people. We would go and chop the wood, and we bring it in the fall before it got too cold, and we cord all this wood for everybody, and that was our jobs. And then of course we haul slew water for people to have their baths, and then in the winter time we melted the snow to make sure that we had enough water for our laundries and stuff like that. So those are the kind of things that I was brought up with. But I didn't only learn that. I've learned a lot of my who I was as a Michif girl. I learned from the old people. The old people taught us our way, our culture, and how to be proud. But not only that, they taught us how to work and how to do things, and even to look after babies. And when the babies were born, we were taught how to make sure how to care for that baby. And and I used to wonder why they make little hats for them babies and they put them on them. And we'd ask the old people, how come we do this? And they said, because when babies are born, the their little heads got to form, and they would make sure that baby's little head would be round and be good. So that was the way and of course we'd teach us how to wrap them to make sure to keep them warm. So we had a lot of teaching from them, and not only the old people, but our aunties as well. And they learned us how to cook and make our foods. And it, you know, when I think back and I go through all the times that I've had with those old people, I really felt I was fortunate to have that teaching, because that taught me a lot of things of who I was and how I could do things and how we could provide. And as I got my family, I was able to follow those kind of things. And you know, when I think back about also those old people were very intelligent and they were good teachers. And we talk about teachers today. These were good teachers. And the thing that I learned was, when you do things, you know how sometimes you're teaching young people, and sometimes it gets frustrating, and sometimes it's, no, you don't do it that way. That wasn't the way with them. They always had that way of saying, oh, that's okay, you know, you knew it wasn't right, but you kind of made that mistake and you kind of wanted, but they'd say, oh, that's okay, look, we'll try it again and we'll do it. So they had that kindness of teaching us and keeping us not to get frustrated, I guess it would be. And I was taught a lot. I taught a lot how to look out for our traditional foods, how to look after babies, and how to, some of the medicines they gave us, how to keep house. So when my time came, when I had my children, those are the way I was taught and learned, and I was quite honored to do that. But growing up, and a lot of times when I look back and I think, some people have said to me, well, did you ever have any teenage life? Well, I didn't know what a teenage life was. We never knew. We lived in a prairie and a bush, and there was nothing around but that. So we made our own way of life of our young people. My dad cut big logs, and they made merry-go-rounds for us. They made all kinds of things so that we could continue to work with and, you know, to entertain ourselves. And of course, we used to have competition. As you know, Indigenous people are very competitive. And we used to go out there and try to see who could cut the most wood, who could saw the best, who could do the best in the racing. They take us in gunny sack racing and all these baseball. We learned all that because my uncles were into that. And so those were the kind of things we looked forward to on Sunday, because when Sunday came, our people came together, and that day nobody worked. The old people would say that was the day for our Creator, and we had to honor that. So we looked forward to that day, and we'd watch our uncles play baseball and different kinds of games they play. And then of course they taught us how a lot of that. So that's the way we were raised as young children out there. And then I always think back, and I always think this to me was always now makes me kind of think on sometimes that they would make a bunch of food and they would all get together and they'd all get it in the wagon. And we lived in the middle of nowhere. There was no houses, nothing. It was all prairie and bush. And they'd say, we're going out now. And they'd drive further up past and we'd be in more bush and more prairie. And at the time, it never dawned on me because you're young and you just do the things that have to be done. And then, of course, they would play cards. They would tell stories. And of course, us kids, we would have all kinds of games to play there. And then we would come home. And as I got older, I thought about this. I thought, why would they take us further in the bush when we lived in the bush? But I guess when I told my kokum one day, I said, why did this happen? She said, well, it was good to bring all the families together. The men who were working, the family needed to get together. So this was, I guess, a way of them getting away and kind of relaxing, like they do take them out to the lakes and stuff nowadays. But at that time, it never even dawned on us why this happened. So, you know, when I think about that, it's kind of funny. Us cousins used to laugh about it and think it was kind of funny, but then we realize now there was a reason for that. It would get them together, be able to visit one another and get away from all of the work, I guess, that the husbands, and just get them to relax. So I always wondered what would have happened if we had that opportunity, have to stay in the city of Saskatoon. What would happen? But I know what would have happened now, because we lived there on the road allowance, and that was our community. We had a united community. We had our languages, we had our traditions, we had all our teaching. And it came in 1953 when they decided that we had to move into the city. We were in the city, but to us we weren't in the city because it was bush and prairie. So we were moved into city of Saskatoon, and it was at that time we had to move into little houses, and our families kind of, you know, we lost touch. We didn't have that unity and that all that togetherness. Some lived on the east side, some lived on the west side, some, you know, and for some of our people, we like my kokum and my family were very close, and we got a big 2-story house, and we all lived in that because we didn't want to separate. And for some of our people, it was hard. And we lost a lot of our way of life with our younger people then. And that's how we ended up in Saskatoon. And the discrimination, we didn't realize what discrimination was. We didn't know about talking about, but when we moved in the city, us kids learned the hard way. We were, you know, we were called dirty Indians. Where'd you come from, you dirty Indians? And we didn't know what Indians, we didn't hear such a thing as that. And the only ones we had contact was from Whitecap, and that was called Moosewood. And we never heard the word Indian. And because they used to say Sioux, we used to say, you know, we used to relate them as their uncles, and because they were always visiting with us. And Mrs. Eagle, her and I grew up together, and we, you know, her dad and my dad were very close, and we'd always visit. And so we never heard them kind of things. And when I told my kokum, I said, we went to school, and this nun told us all to stand up. Of course, all us Métis kids stood up, and they told us, now this is what you call a savage. So we were really proud because we never heard the word savage. We thought, well, they're saying nice things about us, until we came home and told our people, and they were really upset about this, and they told us what they did. So, you know, we endured that, but we became very strong. We you know, we decided that my uncles then came back from the army, and they went out to army young, and they came back from the army, and they were kind of our teachers. They learned us how we had to survive, and we didn't, stand up for ourselves, and learn to understand that these kind of things, we were going to win, and we were going to have a good life. So I've lived here in Saskatoon now for 84 years, and the things I do now, I never thought I would ever do. We were scared of police because I remember this must have been an RCMP then. We didn't know. Well, we knew him was Samaganak, and he would come through our camps, and he would open our tents with his stick, and he rode on a horse. And when we'd see him coming, and the old people said, "Oh, it's Samaganak," so we go and hide, because we were scared. We didn't know. We thought who these people were. And today I'm involved, sitting on our chief's advisory, and I always used to say to them, I tell them, I never in my wildest dream would I ever think that I'd be sitting here with you policemen, because we were always so scared of you and didn't like you, because we always thought you guys were they were our enemies. But it came a long ways. Way after, but it took some time. It took a long time before all these things. It didn't grow overnight, and we're still running into some issues. But I think that our people now are stronger and understanding that we have rights, and that's where we're at. And we teach our children as well, and to go to work. We all went to work. When I first started working, I was working as a waitress, and I used to get $20 a week. I thought I was rich. But we survived. And it was a hard time. It wasn't easy for us. But on the other hand, the sadness of it all was that for me, and I've lost a lot of my, I know I can speak some of my language, but I lost a lot of that. They've taken that away from us. We lost a lot of that in schools, and we're not able to speak with one another like that. So, in saying that, they couldn't break us for who we were and be proud of who we are. And that's the thing I'm always proud of, that I'm able to be who I am and proud of who I am, and know my culture, and identify who I am. And I taught this to my children. I had 10 children, and I always said to them, be always proud of who you are, and learn to accept who you are. And they have, and they were brought up in Saskatoon. It was an easy thing, but they did well. I made sure when my children went to school, I was there. And the reason I did that is because when I went to school, my poor mother and my aunties didn't come to school, and we'd come home and tell them what was going on, when we'd get strappings, and we'd get, we were used to all of this. And they would say, well, we can't do nothing. But when my children was going to school, I made sure that I was going to make sure that they weren't going to go through what I went through. They needed an education. I was going to be there for them. And I took, when something came up, I went into the schools and made sure my children were not going to be discriminated on. And I never regretted it. My children all went through their school and went into their high schools. But it was hard. It was hard, but I'm thankful for today, for who we are. And I'm thankful for a lot of our people, all of our people, who we are today, especially in the cities. And when I think back of the days that we were out there, some of the people, when we tell our stories, they say, did you find that a hard time? I didn't find it hard. I found it was a good life. And I think that was because of the unity and the power we had, and with the old people, and all the healthiness that we had, and the teachings, and how we were able to live off our land. And we were taught how to when we pick berries, even when we used to go and berries, they would say you respect that tree, because if you don't break the branches, because there was the creation of our creator, and these are things that will come back to for the next year. So we were taught those kind of things, and we respected that. Even the earth, when we pulled our weeds and when we dug our vegetables out, and to be respectful for them. Those things were all taught to us, and you know, I'm grateful that I had that opportunity to be brought up that way. And I think back today, and I look and I listen to so many of the stories of our people and how we had to live. But a lot of times I never ever felt bad. I always felt I had a good life. I had a good home, and even though our little tents and shacks were in the snowbanks, we lived, and but we were there, and I think it was because of the love and the we had within the families, and that support we had um, together as a group of people. And you know, when my mother had to go to work, they would just leave because they have the old people were there to look after us. And when we moved into the city, and I find now, even now till this day, are some people that come from the north, or something. That's the way it was. That's where the tradition. Who was home, we'd look after those kids. And now I find in the city, sometimes these people come in and they leave the children not thinking, because this is a way you do things, and then the welfare pick comes in, and so you know, there's a lot of different ways that our people suffered because of that, and people didn't understand that. So that's why I always feel it was important when I had the opportunity to come and be involved. As my children got older, I was asked to work with the Métis Nation, and I was kind of nervous because I'm lucky I had a grade 5 education, but I always thought, I have to start somewhere, and I believed in education for my children. And one day I thought, here I'm teaching my children to go to school and get an education. And that's when they started that program, and now it's the Gabriel Dumont, so you could go and write your exams. And one day I was sitting at home and I thought, I'm going to do this. If I teach my children these things, I have to be honest. So I went down, and I was a little nervous, and I wrote these tests, and they told me they'd let me know. And one day I got in the mail, I got this letter, and I opened it, and I was sitting there and I was excited. I had got some of my grades. I got 10s and 11s and 9s, 12s. And I was really honored for myself, because I'm by myself and sitting in my house. And my son walked in, and I said to him, "I have a good day today, my boy." He says, "Oh, what kind of day you got, Mom?" And I showed him my letter, and he looked at it and he says, "Mom, I'm proud of you." And it made me feel good to hear my child say, "Mom, I'm proud of you." And I knew I had to do what I have to do, and I have to do it for not only for myself, but for my children, but more so for myself. I wanted to better my life. And I never had that opportunity, raising children and not being able to finish doing that. So then when I was offered that job with the Métis Nation, and then I went on with the Native women, and I must have to say, that was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And it was, again, with the help of the elders. We had 3 elders: Elder Josephine Cameron, Mrs. Dion, Mrs. LaValle. They were our teachers. Those were our elders that taught us women the way of life, and how to go out and talk, and how to do good things. And they always said to us, you remember, you are representing your people. And when you're out in those places and where you go, you respect yourself, because when you respect yourself, you're respecting your people. They were tough. They were tough on us. We were young women, all of us, but we had lots of good teachings, and that's where our women's organization grew. And I'm so proud of all of them women. I'm so proud of our elders, but I'm also so proud of all of them women. They were people that had, we had rough lives, and they grew and they became very strong women, and they've done so many good things for not only for themselves, but for their families and for other families. And a lot of times I know I got some awards, but I always make sure that those people are mentioned, because it was with those people's support, with those people's telling me I was the president at the time. They felt this, I guess that they gave me that job to do. And I always wanted to honor that and always remember those women. And our women did a lot of work for not only for our families and our women, but they also paved the highway for a lot of our young women today. And when I look at our young women today in those jobs and being able to go to schools and going into these universities and becoming whoever, I am so proud of them, because it took a lot. I know I ran for city council, and I never knew what discrimination was till I ran into there, and they sent me letters at my home saying, squaws should be at home raising your kids. Are they all from the same dad? And things like this. And it was scary. And I wanted to quit. And my husband said, if you quit now, you'll always quit. I thought you wanted to be strong. But I was worried about my children. Maybe they'd do something to them. And then I went to bed that night and I said a prayer to our Creator and said, give me some strength and some guidance. And in the morning I thought, no way, I'm going to stand up. Those old people told us we're doing good things, and I'm going to stand up. I wanted 50 votes. We ran in giant areas. We did it in 3 weeks. I got 50 votes and I was happy, and I was the first one that paved that highway. And we always said we're doing it for our people and for our young people as well. And when I look back and see what's happening today, I'm honored and proud to see that our women worked hard, and our men, and we always worked with our side by side with our men. I'm a firm believer that we as male and female, we have to be together. We need that together. Those old people, when I was growing up, my mushrooms and my kokums, they always worked together, them old people. And that balance is so important with our men. And we always supported our men because they were struggling too, and they had tough times. So our women worked side by side, and I still believe that that's the way our young women, I talk to them and tell them that's important. We must support one another, especially our men side by side. We work together and respect one another. And that's the way I live my life. It's when I was working with my husband was as equal as I was as equal. No, we weren't. One wasn't further ahead. And I used to hear people, some of them say, oh, well, the women walk behind the men. That's not true. Those were just stories or things that we're saying about our people. I see how our old people work together. And I used to watch my mushrooms and my cookums after work, the hard day's work. They'd sit down at night and they would sit and they'd discuss things. So I know that it's there, and our people will continue that tradition. So those are some of my stories that I can tell you about growing up and the teachings I had, and I'm proud to and honored that somebody had asked me to hear my stories, because I always think we need to tell our stories and they got to be heard, and we got to continue to teach our young people. So that's some of my stories that I have. And today I'm 84 years old, and And who would say that I'd be sitting here talking to you on a computer? Makes me laugh when I think about it. My children laugh and think it's funny. They see me talk. They said, Mom, we never thought we'd ever see that. And again, that's because I'm a firm believer that Creator put us in a place, I guess, to help our people and do how we can do it and the best way we can do people. And here our young people who came, said, you can do this, Elder, we'll help you. And I was scared. I didn't know not everyone to do these kind of things. And I'm learning, I'm still learning. I had help today and I thank Autumn for helping me. I'm still learning. So, but you know, for me to say that I ever was sorry for my life, I wasn't, because I had some tough times. It wasn't easy time, but out of those tough times came my strength and my understanding, and the teachings taught me a lot that I have to. And that's what I see. And you know, I remember my uncles when they went to war, they were young. And when they came home, and you know, we talk about the addictions that are out there nowadays. We didn't know, like, we never seen that until our uncles came home from the armies, and that's when our people got into the alcohol. It was scary because we never seen that. But you know, when I think back and I look at all of the things that our uncles went through, or our men in the army, I remember the stories. My uncle used to sit and tell us stories, and he used to cry. He was a young man, and you know, they had to do things. And I remember the one story he said, it reminded me of my mother. She was an old lady, and they went in and they told him they had to shoot him, and he said, I couldn't do it. It was like my mother. And but they you know, really got mad at him because they said, this is what happens. They use these and then they'll get killed. So we didn't understand why they went drinking like this. And it wasn't until after then they sobered up and started getting into the program and becoming healthy. And it was then that they started our local, which is called Local 11, and did a lot of good work and started all kinds of programs for our people that had addictions. And I was proud of them because when I look back and I watched what they went through and how they suffered, to, you know, they had to detox themselves. And I look and I see our people today and they're suffering, and these young people. And I so many times I pray and think to Creator that our young people will, or the mothers and fathers will get healthy, and for these young people. So, you know, I never condemn or judge people, because there's always a reason for this. And we can only hope and pray that that will change. Maybe not in my time, but I know that there's a lot of young people out there that are good people. And I've seen a lot of young people. I work with a lot of our young kids and went into courts and worked with families, and you know, it saddens me to see that. And I remember saying to one of the judge one day, you know, Your Honor, there's no bad kids. And he laughed at me and he said, why are you, I said, well, you know, I'm going to tell you why. When you were born, did you say I'm going to be a judge? He laughed. He said, no, I was just born. I said, that's right. That's what I'm trying to tell you. When these children are born, they didn't say, I'm going to go out and get into trouble. I'm going to do this. They were babies, just like you. These things are happening because there are issues that they're facing out here, and we have to get to the bottom of that. And when I did them circles, and he used to say, there's no bad kids, you know, because the elder says there's no bad kids. And it was good to work with these young people, and I loved working with them. They're hurting, and I see that so many times, and I just pray that our time will come again where that cycle will change. We've lost so many good people. And if we can just reach out again to our young people and bring our, there's a lot of our elders are not here that used to be around, but we have to keep teaching our knowledge keepers and making sure they understand that it's important for us to work together. No matter if we're Métis, First Nation, we have to work together. We have to stand together in a united front, and we have to say that, and always respect one another, and respect our men, and respect our women, and respect our children. If we don't do that, we're going to lose our children, the generations tomorrow will lose. So that's why I always say to people, please get involved. We can only do things if we make changes and respect. And I know sometimes living in the city in Saskatoon, and for a lot of the other people that live in the other cities, it's a hard time sometimes, but never give up and get in there and educate the people that don't understand why these things are happening to us. And I think people are starting to wake up now when they're finding our children's graves, and all of these things are starting to come to life. I think people now will start understanding why our people are suffering. And I think that not only our elders, but the people that have hard lives are going to change, and they're going to be able to make that change. So that's the stories I want to take out there. Don't look for anybody that's not Indigenous and they're listening. Don't judge us for our colors. Don't judge us for who we are. Think about the hardships and the sadness and the things that happen to our children when they're in care or in the institutions. And they're human beings. They have hearts. We need to work together, and we can only make a better community or a city if we work together and understand one another. So those are my thoughts and my prayers to all of the people that I talk to within our community. And every time I have that opportunity, I try to educate them the best I can. That from my past experience, what went on with our family, and I'm always proud of who we are. And so I'm hoping that one day that will change. It's little by little. We have a Métis police chief, which I never dreamed we'd have. We have Indigenous people sitting in governments. That's a beginning. Those are baby steps, but we need to take giant steps. Now we have to take bigger steps and giant steps to come. And but in saying that, we have to work in an equal position, because we have to make sure that people understand and we can have that relationship and show them that we are gifted and we have lots to offer, and we're good people and we're kind people. So, with that, I'm always proud when I see our young people doing good and getting in there and speaking, and especially our women. I remember when we formed a women's organization, oh my goodness, and it wasn't only our women that were discriminated on, it was all women. And it was hard, but our women were so proud, and they were so strong and they were good. And it was hard because you must remember we all had children, we all had families. And with the good gracious of my auntie and my mother that helped me with my children when I had to travel and some of the other people's families, we had that support. And even our own men, sometimes the older men would say, ah, you woman, you guys should be staying home, never mind. But we educated our men too. We worked together and they understood and we had a good relationship. So, you know, that's part of life, I guess. And I think, you know, they were used to the women at home all the time with the children and they were working, and to see women now leaving their children and going out, it was probably to them, it didn't sit right. So, but I think as time went on, they were very respectful. We had a lot of good relationships with them. So those are my stories that I can talk about that I wanted to share with you. And never forget that we all have something to offer. Everybody has something to offer. And always listen. Maybe it's something that's not going to work for you, but maybe it'll help one of your family members or one of the children. And that's the way I look at it. So we have some very intelligent and smart people, and we have some people that are good listeners. You know, especially, you know, I always used to think the old people were the greatest because they would, when you were talking, they would sit there, and I always remembered their eyes would close and they'd shake their head. And I used to think, what, these old people are going to sleep? And I told my cook, how come the old people are tired? Ah, she said to me, they're not tired, they're just listening. So they're taking that in so they'll know what to do. But see, that's the thing we as young people didn't understand. So when I see that, sometimes always that comes to my mind when I watch some of the older men. Sometimes their eyes are closed and they're sitting there, and that right away that comes to my mind. My cookum is with me again. So that's my stories I can tell you. And I hope we continue on. I hope the stories will never stop, because there's other generations that are going to be after us. They need to continue to hear the stories, our young people, the older people, as we leave this world, where that's the legacy I want to leave. I firmly believe that there's so much rich history and so much understanding and for our young people, and not only our young people, some of our older people too. You know, we have to our young people, we have to listen to them as well. You know, when I say older people all the time, I also look at our young people, and when I'm talking with them, and I work with lots of them, younger ones who are, and I always tell them, you know, you're my mentors too. And this young girl said, well, Elder, how come I can be your mentor? I said, because times are changing. Comparing to where I was, look at today, the things that happened. You guys are here. So those days are going to change. That times are going to change. So you're my mentor, and I love working with young people because they can help me as well to understand of today's, and the tomorrows are going to probably be a lot harder. So that's why it's important for our elders to listen to our young people and respect them and talk with them and let them give us some teachings too of the new world. So thank you. That's our story.
Thank you so much, Nora, for sharing with us. Nora, I'm so excited to, Senator Nora, my apologies. I'm so excited to have you here today. You are a big advocate for the opposing against the AIM, which was, for those who don't know, was the what we consider the 60s scoop now. She was a big, she was against it, and she was well spoken. And I just want to know if anybody else has questions for Nora, you can leave them in the chat. But for Nora, my question is, what gave you the strength to stand up against those and oppose those racial policies that are here today, and then and here today?
Well, as you know, when we got involved with the women, there was at that time we had a lady, her name was Lillian, and we had halfway homes. We had different programs for women. We had halfway homes, we had treatment homes, and this lady was sent to us, and I got to know her, and she was such a sweet, wonderful lady. And then she got really better, and we got her own place. But at the time, we didn't know that she had these children. And we were going out, and we used to travel and do workshops across the province, and we were going up north, and I went to pick her up that morning, and I came out, and she had this newspaper across her heart, and she got in the car, and she was crying. And I said, "What's wrong, Lillian?" She said, "These are my babies." "Your babies?" I said. She had 5 children. I said, "We didn't know." And then she told me her story. Her husband died. She ended up in a breakdown, and then they put her in the Battlehood Hospital. And then when she got out, she started drinking because they wouldn't give her children. And I was so upset. So I got a hold of our women. We had women field workers across the province. And the minister was Minister Taylor at that time, social services. Then I looked at this newspaper, and I see these little kids, their pictures in there, and it's like advertising a little puppy dog, and these pictures were in here, and it really frustrated me. And so I called our women, and we used to work with legal aid at that time a lot. Because they were just organizing their organization. And Linton Smith was one, and he said he would help us. So we called a meeting, and we had over 500 people that showed up the next day. And we brought in the minister a couple of days, not the next day, a couple of days. And it was at that time we fought that ads will get out of those papers. And they did. We got the ads being taken out of that paper. Anyhow, we ended up finding out where the children were, but she didn't get to see her children right away. And we worked hard, and we fought for her. And then we started picking up other people's cases. And it wasn't until later on that I found out that she had a little daughter and how they treated her. And she went to a meeting, and they thought they took her children away again, and they told her she was drunk, and she wasn't drunk. But anyhow, the young girl, Finding Cleo, it was called, she was down the States, her and her brother. They adopted her down the States. She had a good time home. We found that out because we did a follow-up with it with CBC. But it wasn't until after she died. But before that, she used to call me her guardian angel because we wouldn't give up. She done very well. And, you know, it really saddened me to see our people treated that way. I'm in touch with her 2 oldest daughters. After her mother died, they looked for her sister, and then I got a call from CBC, and I didn't want to talk about it because I didn't know who other people's names were. And finally, anyhow, I am in contact with the family, like the 2 oldest. Hopefully after COVID one day, we're going to meet. I'd love to meet the family because she was so lovely. And she had passed away. But before she passed away, I ran into her time. We were doing a speaking there for residential at the exhibition, and she was in a wheel, really crippled up. When I ran into her, we cried and hugged one another. And she said, "You know what? I got all my children. I seen all my children and my grandchildren, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart." And I said, "Don't thank me. Thank you. It was your strength, my girl. It was your strength that did this." So when I see this happening to our children, and I sat with welfare for the reason that I want our children to be put with their families. They shouldn't have to go in strange homes because they should be with us. And I remember when they went, the 60 Scoop people came to me and asked me to go to Regina with them. And they went out that night, and I was in bed, 11 o'clock, they're waking me up Elder, we've come to wake you up. I said, what's going on? We're going to leave here tomorrow. We're not going to be here. I said, why? They said they were meeting with the premier and they were supposed to get their apology. And they said, the way this is set up, they never give us a chance. So I looked at that and I thought, oh my goodness. But I said to them, you know, if you go home tomorrow, then you fought the fight for nothing. And then there's the tomorrows who's going to fight for them. Stand up, come in there and speak up for yourselves. So they said, will you speak? So I said, okay. But I said, you might not like what I'm going to say because I'm going to be very harsh. And they said, that's okay. So when I listened to his speech and it was so hollow, it really saddened me. And I thought, wow. I went to the one in Ottawa when they give for the residential school. It was such a hollow apology. It bothered me. I've seen people crying and people fainting, and it was really sad. And I said that to Harper. This was so sad. The only one that had a good heart was the little French premier from Quebec, broke from his heart. When I came here to the Saskatchewan, it was the same thing. So I told him, Mr. Premier, it took you 60 years to come and give a hollow speech to our 60 Scoop people. You take a look at these people in here today, these young people holding their babies. Some of them are crying. Does that sound like you gave them a good speech? What are you? I never heard what you're going to do for them. I didn't heard what they could work with him to do. I was really upset, and I didn't care because I just felt when I looked at their faces and the disappointment in them, it disappointed me. And we were right. In fact, just a few weeks ago, I spoke to one of the 60 Scoop and he said, you know, Elder, you were right. We're still battling the fight. I said, I know, my boy, but you know what? Never give up. Because you are the people that are going to have the strength now. You've been through that, and you can only help the others that's going to go through that. And there's been some changes, but they're baby steps. That's not good enough for me. We need to be heard. Our people need to be listened to. Our children have every right to be as healthy and happy in good homes like other children. And our people can give that. They may not be able to give them all the toys and stuff that other people give. But I used to say to my kids because I had to live in a middle class area, and they used to say, oh, so-and-so's rich, they got all of this. And I said to them after supper, you know, I said, we're rich too. And they said, no, we're not rich. How? You don't have all these things they have. I said, you know what we have? I said, we have love. We got good health. We got food on our table, and we respect one another. When you go to bed, we say good night, I love you. In the morning, I pray that our Creator is going to keep you safe. And you know, I said, that's the richness we have. No money can buy that. And if you're going to sell your soul, you'll never be happy. And I was hoping my kids heard me. And it wasn't until after they go, I heard them telling their kids the same thing. So it kind of made me feel good. And that's the way I feel. We may not be able to give them all the things that's out here, but if we can give them our love, our respect, and show them that we're who we are as a people, we will win. That's the way I feel, and that's the way I work with my people. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you so much. If anybody has any questions they would like to ask Nora, please just type them in the chat and we will share them with her. Thank you so much, Nora. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
There is just one question from Karen McCauley. You don't have to share it if you don't want to, but she's asking if you have any contact information that she could contact you personally. Earlier in the chat, she said Hi, I'm Karen McCauley from Indigication. I'm a professional speaker, and my goal is to help Indigenous peoples and Indigenous allies learn vocabulary, terms, and context so they can be comfortable engaging in uncomfortable conversations. And then she just put, what message I hope to deliver as a public speaker. I would love to hear the message she sees best to deliver. So if you're comfortable sharing that, or if you want to share it with Autumn, and then we could connect you two personally, so you don't have to
You
share with
can-
everybody if you're not
Well,
comfortable. But yeah,
I think that's great. I think we need to have those communications, and if it's any way we can help, there's a lot of our people, like, we have a little elders group too, and then some of our elders are not as outspoken as I am sometimes, and sometimes I think, okay, but that's the way it's been for me. I'm if I have something to say, I'll say it, but I'll do it in the best respectful way. I don't believe in yelling and hollering at, there's ways that we can talk to people. And if she wants to contact me, you can give her my number.
all right. I did save her email, so I will pass on her information from, or sorry, pass on your information to her. Thank you.
And when I think about our people that were in residential school, some of them still are not able to speak. We did workshops through the Healing Foundation, and I knew people for many long time, and especially our men. And it was so sad because when they spoke and they broke down and apologized to their children and their wives and their families, and it really, really took a lot out of us, that were co-hosting this. And, we had to make sure we had professional people that were on hand, because these people literally fell apart. People never seen that. And I was shocked because I knew these men were strong men that we worked with, and I never ever in my life thought in any way that they had went through this. And I've been through a lot with a lot of people, and I'm going to be honest here. There are things that I'm going to my grave with that I will never talk about, because these people gave me they believed that in my confidence, that the things they told me was going to be with me. And I thought about these things, and there was times that our elders go through a lot, we hear a lot, and we too have feelings, and I know sometimes I have to take time out and look after me. I always tease them and tell them I'm a selfish old girl. I'm number one, and I believe I'm number one, and I love me. Because if I don't keep myself healthy, I can't work with these poor people that need that strength. So, but sometimes we as elders too, we feel that it's our obligations but we had to, two of the elders that came to me and said, you can't do this now. You have to take time for yourself to get healthy. And they were older than me at that time. That's a lot to take into your mind and in your heart. You got to think. And if you don't get healthy, you can't help the next person. So when I'm feeling that I'm got a lot of stuff on me, I take time for myself, whether it's just going out. I'll be honest, I love going to the Valley Village and to the Salvation Armies, looking through, even if I don't buy nothing, it's just your mind. You're away from all this stuff. You need to take that time for yourself. You got to keep yourself clean and healthy, or you can't help other people. And those were teachings from older people, and I respect that, and it did help. So for some of our people that not only you have to be because of this, if you are people out there that are having a hard time and going through a tough time with family, you know, we all have these issues. I mean, we don't like what some of our families are doing. I know I wasn't happy with some of my family, but I love them. I don't never ever condemn them, but it hurts and it bothers me. It used to bother me. But you know, you can only do so much, and you can pray and leave it in the hands of our Creator, but never ever give up on them and never condemn them. So, but I always say they'll, one way or the other, they'll get better. And it's happened. We've lost some of our people that never got better, but we pray for them. They're at peace now. So there has to be ways you have to think on how to work with these people. Give them the best you can, but be honest with them. Don't be an enabler. Tell them straight. And that's what I do. I remember doing a circle at one of the Maxi house. There was a young man there, really angry. And I did the circle. So I told him, you know, my boy, I'm going to tell you something. You're angry with yourself. You weren't worried about your little kids when you were doing whatever you were doing, or you weren't worrying about your wife. He said, don't tell me that I didn't love my children. I said, no, I'm not telling you that. I'm just telling you at that time, Mr. Addiction was the boss, not you. Don't tell me about being a victim. I said, I know what it's like to be a victim because I was a victim, I said. But I said, if you don't feel you're comfortable here and you're saying the court put you in here, then move out, give somebody else a chance. You think about that, I said. What if something happened to your child? A house burnt or she's died? What would you be sitting here saying? So I guess he kind of got mad at me, and he went back to his room and he was going to pack his clothes, and he was really angry. But I never thought anything about this. The following week I went back and he said, can I come and sit next to you? And I said, of course. But I forgot all about this. So he said to me, I want to apologize to you, Elder. I said, oh, for what? And he said, I was mad at you last week. And he tells his story. And he said, you can tell that story because that's the way I felt. And it was 3 years later, I was coming out of Giant Tiger and I heard somebody saying, hello, Elder. Hello, Elder. And it was him. And here's just him and his wife and his little children, 3 of them. He says, you know what, Clum? It's 3 years I've been straight and I haven't drank. I said, oh, well, good for you. I said, look how beautiful your children are. And they were doing the program yet. And I said to him, you know what, my boy? If you think I'm patting you on the back, you're crazy, because I'm not, because this is only 9 o'clock at night. Today is not over. He laughed and he said to his wife, I told you she was a tough old lady. But you know, I got in my car and I said, thank you, Lord Creator, for giving them people that strength. Because I thought of my family. And I know I lost my families, a lot of them. And I thought, you know, I prayed for him that night and his family. And when you hear those good stories, it makes your day. And so never give up. Never give up on them. And that's why I always fight for the underdog. They tease me. They all say, you still with your little rankies? I will say, yep. And they're the nicest little guys to work with. And as long as the good Lord's given me health and a good mind and lets me work, I'll work with them. So that's who I am. And I say that with honesty. I love to help whatever I can. I don't say I know everything, but I can give them what I feel, and I know what I went through as a victim of the addictions. People, I know how I felt, and I lost a lot of my families. But I never gave up on them. I always loved them, and I'll always love them. So never ever give up. I know one day that day will come, that maybe things, I've seen people change, and that's a good feeling. You can't maybe win them all, but you're going to win the majority. That's what I always am a believer. So those are my stories. That's the kind of work I do. Those are the kind of stories that I talk about, because that's the kind of things the old people used to say. Ah, Kiam, you love them. You help them. Creative told you, it's going to guide you. So those were the teachings I got from the old people, and those are the kind of teachings that I continue on to work with.
Awesome. Thank you, Nora. We do have one question in the chat. It's Sineke. Nora, I have a question. My mother and a few of her brothers and sisters went to residential school, and their 3 sisters were adopted out. 2 of the sisters found us, but 1 is still missing. My mom asked me to help her find my aunt. This was in the late 60s, early 70s. Do you know what the first steps would be? We are in Montreal Lake Cree Nation, but I think they would have been adopted from Prince Albert. This is from Autumn Goodwin.
Did you get a hold of the Department of Social Services? And now I'm not sure in the 60s if what they've done with some of those, they've closed their files, but I understand now that if you go to the ministry, that they will they'll make sure that given that you got the proper name. I had a niece that came to Saskatoon, and she went to check, and they said, oh, those were sealed. I'm not sure if they're still sealed, but if you give them, take my number, I will check with the department I'm working with, and trying to see if I can help you, and give me a number and phone me, and I'll get that information. I'll do the best I can to help you.
If you're comfortable enough, you could send it directly to me, your number, and I'll connect you with Senator Nora, if Autumn, if you are comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Awesome. Thank you so much, Nora. You are very knowledgeable, and I'm so grateful you are here today and here to share us your knowledge. I'm sure everybody else in the group is really appreciative to have you here, and to be able to listen to you was an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you very much. And may the Creator bless each and every one of you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.